Rusty or?
No, you don't have to record anything. I'm just going to
Okay,
record
that's good.
couple hangouts.
Because there's always a hassle working on those things.
Yeah, this way is much more quickly. We'll just get right to it. I'll edit it and make it look all pretty. It'll probably be uploaded rather sometime this week. But enough of that. In terms of the Nintendo Switch, and it's recording right now, actually, I want to get your initial thoughts and reactions about, let's say, Nintendo's new trend into this area in terms of merging both console and mobile platforms, and what would that mean, not only in terms of the future of their company, but also in terms of the grander gaming market, and your thoughts on it. And Conrad can go first on that.
Well, the Switch is a mystery so far. It looks like a successful mystery because fusing the handheld and home console aspects seems to be a brilliant idea on the paper. But the question is the system powerful enough to even gain third-party support? Is it powerful enough to output the same level of resolutions that we see on the upcoming Xbox Scorpio and PS4 Pro, which just was launched, I think it was yesterday. And I believe that, yes, the handheld will be super powerful, but does the docking station have any additional power to offer? That is my concern about the Switch. If it turns out to just be a slightly more powerful system than the Wii U, far away from the PS4, far away from the Xbox One, not even mentioning PS4 Pro or Xbox Scorpio, then I am afraid that Nintendo will have to support the system alone after the first or second year. Because I don't see third parties supporting a system that will be underpowered, running on cartridges, and at the same time having problem to output the games that they are developing. As we see the evolution in terms of game engines and so on, it's moving towards 4K, and Nintendo is definitely not moving in that direction. So what I believe the Switch will probably end up with is the best first-party output ever, and that is simply because they will be fusing their development teams for handheld games with the divisions that have been working on console games, which means that we'll be getting more often 3D Zelda games, 3D Mario games, a lot of other Nintendo games that will not be spread to between two systems. It will all come to one system, and that's why I think the Switch will be successful, but not necessarily in terms of third parties.
Yeah, I think you basically hit the nail on the head with how they're fusing the handheld and their home console markets. But the thing that I'm most curious about is if you think about like the third party kind of lashing, or well, I guess honestly some third parties spoke out and said that they were completely for this, that they were excited about it, and then there were some third parties that said that they were against it. And I'm not so much referring to the Nintendo Switch, but these half-step evolutions in the console market, like with the PlayStation 4 Pro or the Xbox Scorpio, because now whenever you're making what was two different versions of a game, one that is best for PlayStation 4 while the other one's optimized to play best on the Xbox One, now suddenly that's double, and you're making an even better version for the PlayStation Pro, and likely the third parties are working on even more powerful or better versions for the Xbox Scorpio. So now even if the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One was around the power of the Nintendo Switch, suddenly there's a fifth platform that they have to worry about. So if it's around the same power, then I'm sure the third parties are going to be more than happy to just simply port their game over to another console. But if it is less powerful, then suddenly not only do they have to work on the PlayStation 4 version, the Pro version, the Xbox version, and then the Scorpio version, now they have to work on a downgraded version. So that's more work for them. than they're already having to do. And if the sales aren't there to back this up, then I think the Nintendo Switch is going to end up just like the Nintendo Wii U. Whereas the first party games were all great. It was some of the best that we've seen, especially with Smash Brothers and Mario Kart 8. But after a year or two, some of the games that were promised as exclusives for the Wii U, like Rayman Legends and Zombie U, ended up being third-party games on PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. So I think Nintendo's strategy in this needs to be absolutely perfect when it comes to marketing to ensure that the third-party support continues for the Nintendo Switch. And honestly, I think they've already kind of messed up on that because they're promoting this first and foremost as a home console system, which is great, but we all know that it's a hybrid console, and I think the reason that they don't want to promote it as a hybrid or more of a mobile console is because the battery life may not be that great for this. So if they say that it is a home console that you look at as being plugged into the wall and charging while you play it, then you don't suddenly get the sense that, oh, this 2-hour battery life isn't really that bad because it's supposed to be a home console first and foremost. But in order to successfully compete in the gaming market, I think what they should have focused on was, instead of focusing on the home console aspect, they should have came out sort of like how Microsoft did at this past E3 when they revealed the Xbox Scorpio project, saying that it's the most powerful home video game console that's ever existed. In a similar way, Nintendo should have came out and said that this is the most powerful handheld gaming console that's ever existed, that you'll have those PlayStation 4 or Wii U-like experiences on the go. And the best example that we've seen of that is with Breath of the Wild, whereas everyone looks at it as the biggest Wii U game. But what I was more surprised about is whenever they showed off Skyrim, the Enhanced Edition, because that's traditionally looked at as a game that everybody runs at ultra settings on their $1,000, $2,000 computer. And to think that you're going to have that 100-hour plus experience on the go with you is something that I think they should have focused on instead of marketing it as first and foremost a home console. So may have got off topic a bit there, but that's my initial thoughts on everything that we know so far.
Yeah, like I really like that's a really good perspective you brought up, especially about how the Switch was marketed. I really especially like how Nintendo portrayed it in terms it's for either the young adults or the full adults, and we saw like people like playing in parties in the rooftops. I'm doubtful like the whole party scenario and people playing in rooftops that's gonna happen.
Yeah.
But anyways, I did like the whole setup, and apparently Karen from the Nintendo Switch, she's a meme now or something. I don't know. But like going on topic again, in terms of how Nintendo is marketing it, they're doing it in a bit of a unique fashion. I think we talked about the difference between what's a hardcore game and a casual game, and we kind of like demarcated between how the game actually plays in terms of how much depth there is. For example, The Last of Us is a hardcore game because you have to be very invested in it. Whereas, let's say Call of Duty can be considered a casual game because I could play Team Deathmatch for about 5 minutes and call it a day. So what I especially like from Skyrim is that Skyrim I would consider to be a hardcore game. There's so much lore, there's depth to it, and you could do so much stuff with it, especially with the PC community in which there's all these mods, and you could jack up your graphics with ENBs and etc. Ultra high settings, and to have that hardcore game that's seen in a hardcore perspective to be placed in a, let's say, a handheld version, I would say it's kind of crossing lines between what is hardcore and what is casual, and what is home console and what is mobile. Like Nintendo kind of made this switch before, pardon the pun, with the Game Boy, the original Game Boy, in which I believe early marketing towards it was they were trying to actually replace let's say some of their home consoles, and just say, oh, you can just have a Game Boy and just play that around. There's actually a really good article written by this one fund management group saying that the Game Boy revolutionized mobile gaming going forward. And Nintendo already has that under the belt. Of course, we have, let's say, the more, let's say, ramped up mobile platform with, let's say, the phone market like iPhone or iOS and Android. But what the Nintendo Switch potentially can bring to the table to this widely developing new world of gaming is that they're introducing a concept that you could play these ultra setting high games on the handheld. However, I do have some reservations about that, specifically about the power of the system. And Conrad, I know you were like having your own like concerns about how powerful is the Nintendo Switch. And I was wondering, what do you think in your perspective, like how powerful Nintendo Switch will be, and like what's Nintendo's strategy?
Well, one of the things we know about the Switch is that it's running in a mobile processor. It's not a typical processor that you find in a PlayStation or Xbox system. So I doubt it will be as powerful as those. But at the same time, NVIDIA is stretching the long lengths to make this custom-built chip to be as powerful as it possibly can be. And I also believe that third parties are attracted to develop games for the Switch due to the duality of the system. It's not only a play on the TV system, it's also a system that you can bring everywhere. And you can play the games when you want, where you want, and with who you want. And that is something I also believe that will be the great trump card in terms of this system. But I still am concerned in terms of the specs of the system, and I'm really looking forward to Nintendo's presentation on January 12th in Japan. January 12th, because we need to know in particular what this system is all about. Is the system just a super powerful handheld, or is it a console that is also worthwhile for more hardcore players or people who value graphical fidelity? So I believe that those two questions need to be answered in January. And we also need to see how many third-party games are coming to the system, because people who are buying PlayStation or Xbox will not be that easily convinced to buy a Nintendo Switch because they don't buy Nintendo games. They don't have any interest in Nintendo games. And the casual market, which Nintendo hit that so perfectly with the Wii, isn't there any longer. They moved over to mobile games. They're playing much more simpler games, such as Candy Crush, such as Pokemon Go. They don't have time or necessarily the will to pay for games that cost, let's say, $40 and upwards. That is the problem I think Nintendo is facing. It's that they are not able to find their market. The market that used to be supporting them, even on the DS, on the 3DS, on the Wii, they have moved on to mobiles. While the market that remains on consoles is a much more mature and hardcore community that isn't easy to convince in order to let them take the risk of buying a Nintendo system, because they are buying systems for third-party games, not for first-party games. And that is a reality that Nintendo needs to find themselves in. And if they are able to find that, hit that market and the balance between the, let's say, bringing some of the casuals back, appealing to the hipster community that we saw in the reveal trailer, and also be able to get at least a crunch of the hardcore community, then I believe that Nintendo Switch will be a success. But if they fail to bring in the mobile crowd and also the hardcore crowd, then I believe that the Switch will be, just like the Wii U, a system that will be basing all of its sales on first-party games, which I don't think is bad in this case, because having all your games on one platform will bring so many Nintendo games that we'll be seeing multiple different Nintendo published titles coming out each month, compared to all the droughts that we had with the Wii U, where there probably wasn't a quality game for 4, 5, maybe even half a year at its worst. So I'm optimistic in terms of first-party support. I am very careful in terms of third-party support. And it will all depend on the success. The first year, if they're able to bring back the casuals, bring back the hardcore, and let's say sell more than 10 million units within the first year, then I believe they will get third-party support also in 2018. If not, then I believe that Nintendo will have another system where they will have to do all of the support themselves.
Yeah, one of my biggest concerns on this, and Conrad kind of touched on this as well, but the battery life and the power that the system has, because theoretically, the more powerful it is, the lower the battery life will have. But I think a great way around this, and again, Conrad brought this up during his first statement, was that if, like a lot of people think that if the console itself has the CPU and GPU combo and then the dock just has like a secondary GPU, then maybe it can upscale the games. That way, all of the power doesn't have to necessarily be coming from the unit itself. Otherwise, that 4 or 5 hour battery life may drain to maybe 3 hours or even less. But something that I was thinking would be a great way to circumvent this is if you do have all of the power in the unit itself, but where on typical HD TVs, you would be playing in 1080p on the unit itself. A lot of people theorize or think that it'll just be the 720p on the screen. So if it has the power itself in the system to output in 1080p, maybe whenever you're just playing on the unit, instead of it downscaling a 1080p image to 720p, what if it just lowers the clock rate and doesn't use nearly as much of the GPU, and it just renders the game in 720p? And then when you have it plugged in, the console itself realizes, hey, I have an external power supply here. I can unlock the rest of the clock speed to fully render this game in its max settings or whatever. And I think that would be a great way to possibly keep manufacturing costs down, since you're not having to build basically a separate motherboard with its own GPU and everything inside the dock. You could just have everything inside the console itself. And then another thing is with the third-party support. I think if they see that Nintendo is really focused on delivering game after game on this unit, and there's not going to be that drought, then even if the first-party support or the sales of this unit isn't that great, then the third parties will see the great first-party support on this system and see maybe the latent potential. To whereas the PlayStation 3, whenever it was first launched, it was $600. It was overpriced. A lot of people didn't really have faith in it. The games weren't that great. But as the years went on, it started selling more and more, and it outperformed what people initially thought it would, judging by its initial release. So maybe, hopefully, third parties, if the Switch does end up selling slow, then maybe they will see the future growth or future potential that the Switch has, especially once, if they end up replacing the 3DS market with the Nintendo Switch, then you're going to get those games like Pokemon and Animal Crossing on the Switch once they completely kill off the 3DS, as they're now doing with the Wii U. And there's tons of people that go out and buy 3DSs just so they can play that next Pokemon game. So I see that if, we see Sun and Moon coming on the 3DS, but if whatever Pokemon game is after that, if it's being developed for the Switch, then there's going to be possibly 1 million units or more that are going to be sold just because it's getting that next Pokemon game, whereas other people wouldn't have necessarily been interested in it because they can already play the Pokemon on the 3DS. But if it's coming to the Switch instead, then it gives them more reason to play. And then not only can you take it on the go and have an already better experience because it's going to be way more powerful than the 3DS, but you're also going to be able to play it on your big TV at home and have like a normal home console experience, similar to the way people used to love what was it, the Pokemon Coliseum games on the GameCube. And in terms of power, I'm not too worried because the pattern that we've seen in the past is, if you go back a few generations, say the when the DS released, it was around the same power as the N64. We've seen games like Super Mario 64 being ported over to the DS, and that same generation, the PSP came out and it was almost as powerful as the PlayStation 1. And then the next generation, we've seen the 3DS come out, which was almost as powerful as the previous home console, which was the GameCube. There were certain GameCube games that were playable on the 3DS. And then when the Vita launched, people were comparing it, between the PS2 and the PS3. So if the pattern continues, then the Nintendo Switch has potential to be in that middle gap between the Wii U and the PS4, or the PS3 and the PS4, even though it's the Nintendo console. But that's if it does follow that pattern, which a lot of people think that maybe it'll be just as powerful as the Wii U. And then there are people that think that it'll be more in line with the PS4 and Xbox One. But if the pattern continues the way it has with past handheld games or handheld consoles, then it'll be closer to Xbox One specs. But
Yeah, it's really interesting, like especially by you brought up like pretty much the future of Nintendo, and especially with the Switch and how does that really determine what direction Nintendo will be in the future. Especially with the Pokemon games, like for now, I think the 3DS is more or less dead after this particular year. Of course, they still have Sun and Moon that's coming out, and I think they have a few more games that are coming out as well. But I feel like they're going to focus everything on the Switch. Like I think the 3DS has a couple more years, maybe not that much longer. But in terms of like the future and what's after the Nintendo Switch, what do you guys think about, let's say, what Nintendo is going to do in terms of the future of their products? Any thoughts at all?
It depends on the success of the Switch. If the format of having a home console handheld hybrid will succeed, then Nintendo might stick to it because they will see the benefits in terms of developing only one hardware platform, developing games for only one system, and also seeing if they can get some third-party support for it. That would probably have a decisive impact on whether they will continue the Switch experiment, or if they will return back to the traditional division between handhelds and consoles. But as I see it, it will be probably impossible to return back to a division between home consoles and handhelds after the Switch, because this is an evolution for gaming. We have never seen a system that is from one of the big three that can offer an experience that is both as strong at home as it is outside. So what I think will probably change Nintendo forever is that they will be bringing franchises that are typical for handheld games, such as Fire Emblem, such as Animal Crossing, and of course Pokemon, to the Switch. And that will mean that we'll probably have our first mainline Pokemon game on a home console. Well, sort of. But it doesn't undermine the fact that we might get an HD Pokemon mainline game sometime around 2018, 2019, and all the hints being found in the leaks from Pokemon Sun and Moon suggest that that might be the case, because there are massive rooms for more Pokemon games now that Nintendo has confirmed that there are gaps in between, even in between the games, that there's indeed need for more remakes, which naturally speaks for more Pokemon games on the Nintendo Switch. I believe we can see maybe one, maybe even two remakes of Pokemon games in full HD on the Nintendo Switch, because they have to do it, because there is a story arc that is missing, even though that they made the games, just like they did with Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire on the Nintendo 3DS. So there's a very high probability that we will see Pokemon HD remakes on the Switch. But I also think we'll see a mainline Pokemon game as the beginning of the next generation, maybe in 2019, maybe in 2020. It depends how long Gen 7 is meant to last. But I think that it will be the success of handheld IPs on a home console that might be the weight that will determine if the Switch is a success or not. Because you get so many Mario Karts, you get so many Smash, but the variety of games have been limited on the Wii U. And if they are able to extend it and expand it on the Switch, then I believe it will be a tremendous success, not only among the Nintendo community, but also among gamers in general.
Going on, sorry, were you going to say something, Andy?
Oh, no. I was just... Go ahead.
All right. Going with what I believe the future of Nintendo is going to be is, usually a year or two after a console launches, they begin like pre-production on what the next console is, judging by what was popular and what was liked about the previous. But with the Nintendo Switch, whenever they first started talking about it, they said it was a third pillar, that it wasn't replacing the 3DS, it's not replacing the Wii U. And now we see Wii U production is ending, at least in Japan, which is what rumors told us months ago. So it looks like that the Nintendo Switch is going to be replacing the Wii U and possibly in a couple of years replacing the 3DS. Because even when the 3DS first came out, they didn't stop support for the DS, which the 3DS was the obvious successor to the DS. But they still ended up releasing I think it was Pokemon Black and White 2 on the DS, even though the 3DS was out and selling well. And I think at the time it already had games like Ocarina of Time 3D, which was doing phenomenal. So even though the new console that could have given you, without a doubt, the better experience was already out and everybody was buying it, they chose to continue to support the DS with the Pokemon game. So I see them possibly 2017 being the final Pokemon game for the 3DS if they do choose to make another one or putting another remake on the 3DS. And if they go the remake route, then that could give them a chance to start working early on the Switch Pokemon game. And then whenever the remake finishes, they can move the full team over to the Switch and begin full production. But that's just one thought with what they can do with the Pokemon series and the Switch. But with the actual console itself, I think a lot of people were looking at this as the hybrid instead of as the home console that Nintendo is trying to market it as. And with it having the ability to be played as a mobile console, as with most of Nintendo's past handheld consoles, there's always been better revisions that's come out like the DSi, the DSXL, or the 3DS XL. So I'm curious to know if in, say, 2018 or 2019 for the holiday season, if they come out with like a Switch XL or something like that, to where it has a bigger screen, or it's just like the way that it looks is re-envisioned. Or maybe in a few years, instead of releasing the next console, they could release that second dock that does add more power. That way, whenever it's just the PS4 Pro and the Xbox Scorpio, instead of Nintendo having to release their next console to sort of keep up in terms of power and charge you $300-400 for it, maybe they do just release a new dock that now suddenly it works. Hold on.
Jesse, I will have to interrupt you there because it all depends if the docking station has any kind of additional power, or it gives any additional power to the system. Because what I'm fearing the most for the Switch is that the system, the screen itself, is the entire hardware. And if that's the case, and the docking station just outputs a cable or makes the image clearer just with the same resolution as on the tablet, then I am really worried for the Switch, because I don't want a 720p console. That would be tremendously underwhelming at this point. So I do really hope that the Switch, the docking station of the Switch, will add additional processing power. But I am a little bit skeptical, to say it mildly, because there's nothing I would want more than a possibility to upgrade the docking station up to 4K. I don't even know if it would be technically possible to do, but at least give the option to people who want to play games at that top-notch level. Because there is a group of gamers that will be demanding 4K when it becomes the norm in the market, both in terms of PC, PlayStation 4 Pro, Xbox Scorpio, and Nintendo can't be lagging behind, because they need that third-party support. They need people to buy their systems, because the Wii U sold less than 15 million units. Nintendo needs a resurgence now, especially since they will probably be closing their handheld business as well. Another Wii U, let's say the Switch, selling less than 20 million units, will be catastrophic for Nintendo's finances. So how I see it is that the Switch has to succeed, because Nintendo is putting such a gamble on it. They don't have that pillow that they can support them with if their home console fails. They have to succeed with the Switch. And that is why hardware could be crucial for whether the Switch succeeds or fails.
I completely agree with some of the points you made, but the way that, I guess this is just more of me hoping for the future of the Switch, but all the way up until the Nintendo Wii and the Wii U, there was always a secondary function that they released later on for their consoles, an upgrade in some way, not necessarily in terms of raw performance power, but they always added some functionality post-launch that the console itself didn't necessarily have at the beginning. With the original Famicom, they had the disk system that you could set it on top of and connect it to, and suddenly you were able to save games that you weren't able to before. It had a little bit of extra processing power to add better sound, to add somewhat better graphics. With the Super Nintendo or the Super Famicom, they had the ability to later plug it in to, I believe it had its own disk system as well that they were trying to work on with Sony. And then it had the Settle-A-View games that you could play certain games that you otherwise wouldn't have been able to running off just the console itself. And with the Nintendo 64, we've seen the expansion pack, which added more RAM, which allowed you to play games that wouldn't have been necessarily possible before, with Majora's Mask or the full Perfect Dark game, Donkey Kong. So With the GameCube, the added functionality wasn't necessarily more processing power, but you were suddenly able to play online, or you were able to play Game Boy Advanced games and stuff like that. There was the link cable that allowed you to connect your Game Boy Advance to use as a second, third, or fourth controller in certain games. With the Wii, we didn't really see any extra functionality. With the Wii U, there wasn't anything to add extra performance. But I would love to see them return to that as a way to answer to the Switch not being that powerful, because something that would be $200-$300 now, in a few years, the cost of buying that CPU or that GPU would be cut in half in just a couple of years. So by spending the same amount of money in just a few years, you'd be able to basically double the processing power. And if they put that technology into a way that you could upgrade the system that you already have instead of buying a brand new one, I would really like to see that. But again, I guess that's just me being hopeful.
Yeah, like I really like both of your points playing in about the whole future and stuff like that. As for the interest of this discussion, I'm a bit optimistic about Nintendo's future. Specifically, the Nintendo Switch had a very positive reaction, especially with the trailers. The like to dislike is very good, and people have made references to Xbox's Project Scorpio and the PS4 Slim and whatnot. In terms of, let's say, closing statements and closing arguments, etc., what would you like to see about the Nintendo Switch? We know we don't know everything about. There's some capabilities that are kind of ambiguous. I believe a Game Explained did a discussion with one of the actors in the reveal trailer, and he said that there weren't, like, Nintendo didn't show all of its capabilities just yet. In terms of ending statements, what would you like to see in terms of the Nintendo Switch will have?
Would you like to go first?
I muted the microphone, sorry. What was the question again?
In terms of, like, what would you like to see about the Nintendo Switch? We know we don't know everything about it, but what would you like to see?
In terms of the presentation in January, I definitely want to know the specs. I hope it will be a 1080p console that can output 60 frames per second, because it's needed for some games. I wanted to improve its online features, because the Wii U had a horrible online system as a online service. Yes, it was free, but it had so many limitations, such as lack of voice chat, lack of efficient means to communicate with other players. That is something that the hardcore community will not accept. And those are also elements that makes people stay away from Nintendo systems. I hope that the system will be as versatile as it is shown in the reveal trailer, that will say battery life is more extensive than, let's say, 3 or 4 hours. Especially on longer trips, that will be a great disadvantage to have low battery life. We know the problems with the Wii U gamepad, that also has restrictions in terms of its battery life, and playing Zelda on it can be a challenge at times, without having, of course, it's docked or connected to a power source. But I think that Nintendo needs to show that they have some actual third-party support, because without third-party support, the first-party output will be great. I have no doubt about it. But they need to have a general third-party support, because Nintendo has been playing with third parties, and yes, they had support for 1 year, maybe 2 on the Wii U, but then they are gone, and everyone is buying PlayStation and Xbox because they have games, because they have the great variety of games. While on Nintendo you can pray, oh, maybe it will come. No, the Switch must have universal third-party support in order to compete with Sony or Microsoft, because they're fighting for the same consumers. Nintendo might say that, no, we are taking another niche, another group. But no, they are fighting for the same consumers. And that's why they need to have efficient control. So the improved Pro Controller is a great asset in that term. Especially in terms of how one of the actors even said that the controller is super comfortable and great to play different games, also hardcore games such as as we saw, as demonstrated with Splatoon in the trailer. But I would also say that without an upgradable dock, this system will most likely struggle because they will not be able to put as much power into the tablet alone compared to a PlayStation or an Xbox. So I pray that the system has additional supplemental power in its docking station, that the docking station can be upgraded if desired, and that Nintendo finally will be able to merge its handheld and home console businesses into a system that will hopefully be the knockout on the competition. But it all depends on the specs. It all depends on third parties. Without specs, without third parties, this will be another Wii U that will sell probably slightly better, let's say somewhere in between 20 and 30 million units. But if they get true third-party support, then we can be talking about 50, 60, maybe even 100 million units. And that's where I believe Nintendo needs to get in order to research after the problems with the Wii U.
Hopeful, or some things that I'm hopeful in seeing is when this launches, the same with the Wii U actually, they moved like a handful of the games that they had on the Wii Virtual Console to the Wii U. If you'd already bought them, then you don't have to spend as much to get the upgraded version on the Wii U. Instead of paying $7 or $8 for Super Mario World, now you just have to pay $2 or something like that. I hope they either do something similar, or if you already have it on your Wii U account, since they're trying to do this unified account thing with Miitomo and their new Nintendo profile, whatever it's called, I forgot the name of it. But they're trying to unify all of their accounts. So if you buy your Nintendo Switch and it sees that, oh, you've already bought this for the Wii U, or you've already bought this on the eShop for the 3DS, you can download it for free on your Nintendo Switch. Suddenly, I think everyone that has went out and bought all of these games on their Wii U or their 3DS, instead of just having one or two launch titles they're able to afford, they have, those couple of big games like Breath of the Wild or the new Mario game that they were looking forward to. But whenever they need to get away from playing it 8 hours straight or whatever, now they can just fall back on, say, Minish Cap or Wario Land or whatever they've played or bought on the eShop or the Virtual Console. And one of the things that I think they promised it on the Wii U was GameCube Virtual Console titles. It took forever to get Nintendo 64 Virtual Console titles and DS Virtual Console titles. But I don't think we ever seen any of the GameCube games to come, which there's a lot of great GameCube games that they could have brought to the Wii U, but we just never seen them. So if the Nintendo Switch is the way to get Smash Brothers Melee or the original Luigi's Mansion or something, or any of the GameCube Metroid games, I think that would be great. So seeing that, I think would be great. Seeing that would be a great way to get people that don't have the $60 to spend on a new game. It would give them something to play if they already have it. And if they bring in motion controls or touchscreen and don't necessarily put a huge focus on every game having touchscreen capabilities or working with motion controls, but if they just had it as a way of, if you buy this game as a Wii Virtual Console title or a Wii U Virtual Console title, a DS Virtual Console, then you can get these DS, 3DS, or Wii U experiences on the Nintendo Switch. But you need the touchscreen and motion controls to do that.
I really, really like that, especially about the whole point between how, especially the Nintendo Switch can be potentially enthralling and also potentially destabilizing for the gaming market so far. In terms of like closing up the discussion, like my personal thoughts about the Switch is that again, I'm very optimistic about the console. Nintendo seems to be taking a different route when it comes to marketing, which is a good thing, and they're completely abandoning the Wii moniker, which is I wholeheartedly applaud. Um, I am curious about what its launch lineup is. Of course, we have Breath of the Wild, Mario Switch, and Skyrim, and whatever else they're putting in. I'm still kind of hopeful for a Metroid, but I don't even know at this point. So in terms of final thoughts before we end the discussion, do you guys want to add anything?
Pretty much covered everything that I'm looking forward to and my thoughts.
There's one thing I think that we should mention, and that is the possibility of making custom-made controllers for specific games on the system. Let's say that could be a great way to bring back the GameCube controller layout. I know there have been mock-ups already made on how you could make a GameCube controller layout on the right side of the Switch. And the same goes with making a gun, for instance, or whatever, just like you had with a little bit similar how you had it to the Wii. But that way you can make the button layout on the right controller unique for each game. And that could also be an interesting aspect and advantage that the Switch may have over the competition.
Definitely agree on that. It was going a bit more point of having customized controllers may or may not happen. I'm hoping it does, actually, since the whole idea of customization within a mobile console is actually very enthralling. Specifically how the 3DS is marketed towards Japanese and Western markets. You could customize a 3DS in terms of having different versions of it, or in Japanese or Japan markets. You can actually change the plates and stuff like that. And so to have something similar like that for the Nintendo Switch will actually be pretty good, since people want to customize their mobile stuff. So I do foresee that being a very lucrative and enhanceable thing in terms of getting the Switch out there. So yeah, I think this pretty much like wraps up the discussion. Before we end it up here, you guys just want to plug in your channels or something?
Yeah, of course. My name is Conrad. I'm owner of Commonwealth Realm, a YouTube channel specializing in The Legend of Zelda, Nintendo content in general, especially Nintendo Switch videos, and of course, gaming timeline videos. Yeah.
Jesse, you want to plug in your channel? Yeah, I think Jesse left. Okay. I'll just wait here for a little bit then.
Yeah. Good luck with editing.
I'll just. Hey, Jesse. Oh, never mind. Thought he was saying. I'll just stop the broadcast here. I'll just plug in both of your channels.